In this week's experimental Johnny Massacre show, Moby is selling his ridiculously large analog drum machine collection, plus Beatmaker Kit by Rowley and Riffer by Audio Modern, all will be explained. Plus, what's the difference between analog and digital? I go by the name of Johnny Massacre, and you're witnessing the Johnny Massacre show. Welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. Even if I get 30 to 70 views per video, if you think about that in the real, tangible, physical world, if I could have an audience of around 70 people every day just to talk about shit that I love, that's a good thing. So yes, once again, thank you. Today is a little bit experimental because I'm going to talk about something I actually know a little bit about, which is music tech. Recently I've been talking a lot about politics, so I just thought I'd switch it up to see if this is a little bit more exciting. It probably will be for me, but I hope if you don't make music you can still get something interesting from this show. So Moby, who the fuck is Moby? I guess he's irrelevant now. He's a bald music producer who looks a bit like a vegan hippie. And he has the rather unfortunate accolade of being famous because he was dissed by Eminem. He did actually make a lot of pioneering electronic music in the 90s. But anyway, that's Moby. And he's selling off his drum machine collection. So a drum machine is an analog device that creates drum sounds using its analog circuitry. And music producer nerds collect this shit. It's a bit like collecting vinyl, DJs collecting vinyl. I sold all my vinyl, but it's the same thing. You can get the same thing digitally now. You can get drum machines that are inside your computer and are all digital. So you don't have to have these weighty, rather large analog drum machines, but people don't just have them for nostalgia and collectability. They actually have a unique sound. What that sound is, we're going to touch upon at the end of this episode, where I talk about what is the difference between analog and digital for noobs. And not that you're... Okay, you are noobs when it comes to this. Let's be honest. If you're not a noob, leave a link in the comments below to your music production work and show me. So I've just cut half my viewership in half, but the remaining people there who haven't been offended by that comment are now going to see this video of Moby selling off his drum machine. So I haven't watched this yet, so it's actually kind of like a reaction video. So here is the news on musicradar.com. Moby to sell off close to 200 drum machines. Please take care of my babies, says Moby. Apparently this could be the largest collection of analog drum machines in the world. Funny, because I haven't heard any drums from Moby for God knows how many years, so what the fuck has he been doing with them? Obviously not much since he's selling them, but let's have a look. This is Moby's like big song. A Lin drum, okay, these are really old school. Look at these fucking things, man. Look at the fonts. This is from another era.
Hi, I'm Moby and welcome to my reverb store. I've always been a little bit obsessed with drum machines. In fact, I've always been a lot obsessed with drum machines. Over the years, I presumptuously believe that I have come up with the largest collection of analog drum machines.
Look at those fonts, man.
I'm selling all of them, every last one, and giving all of the money to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, an organization I work with and I really love. So I'm getting rid of all of my drum machines, and hopefully you...
This guy needs to hit the gym a little bit.
And make great music.
With all this space he's going to make, should buy a bench press.
Things on your bookshelf, or who knows what else you can do with old drum machines.
You can jizz all over them.
Favorite drum machines is...
What is that?
Chamberlain.
The fuck is that?
Far and away the most expensive drum machine that's for sale because it's the first drum machine ever made.
No way.
Tape loops was built, I think, in the 50s.
My
Rather
goodness.
than have a printed circuit,
You've got to be kidding me.
they recorded someone playing drums. And so the drum machine is moving a tape head from tape loop to tape loop to tape loop. And it is
That is insane.
furniture, and it's arguably the rarest, most valuable,
His hands. This guy's so autistic.
rarest, most valuable drum machine ever made because it's the first. I do presumptuously think I have this collection of analog drum machines, but I also have some early digital drum machines. My cutoff point was around 1982, 83. And one of my favorites...
You can see why this guy's famous, man. He's a...
computer. They're very
Despite the weird Californian-esque intonation,
interesting.
he seems like a pretty driven, deep character.
It goes on to make great things with it. One of the hardest drum machines for me to get rid of or to sell is my Roland TR-909. I bought this
This is a classic, by the way. Classic.
at Rogue Music. And if you don't know, the 909 really is the core drum machine for early rave records,
It is.
snow, etc. I mean, there's
Yeah. This like created electronic music.
wonderful drum machine. I actually never owned one.
808's more famous.
Every early rave and techno record was made with the 909.
That's true.
I hope that you get the 909 and it serves you well for decades. One of my favorite old
You can get all these sounds in digital, by the way, but
and drum machine companies was Univox
these are still quite special. They sound a little different.
machines. And I love them because they're just these quintessential
fuck?
70s drum machines. And you can imagine everybody from Kraftwerk to whomever, you know, all the people, all the disco records, everything that involved those mid.
What the fuck is that picture on the wall on the left? Is this his house?
It's also a very nice looking drum machine. I'm selling a bunch of drum machines.
Old school.
But also vaguely be considered furniture. Because there are a lot of drum machines that were very small, like little boxes, that you carry around with you. And then there are some, like the Wurlitzer Sideman. It's like a big, heavy, chunky piece of equipment. And I guess it was so you could play nightclubs, restaurants, church ballrooms, and you didn't need to like plug into the amplifier because it comes with a built-in speaker and a built-in
Please demo that.
I mean, after all this time, to be honest, they don't work all that well, but it's just so interesting. I mean, nowadays, most of our sounds are virtual, you know, so there's no box at all. And I still sort of love these big, giant boxes and just imagining people in, you know, the 50s and the 60s and the 70s carrying around drum machines that weighed 60 or 70 pounds. That's my drum machine collection. There are hundreds of
He doesn't want to sell this, man. You can tell by the sigh.
I loved each and every one of them, and honestly, I hope that if you buy them, you love them just as much as I did. So please take good care.
He's moved on. He's using past tense. Okay, I got a bit of respect from Moby after that. Call them his babies. I know exactly what he's talking about. When it comes to music tech, I also have my babies. But unlike Moby, I will never be selling this shit. Never, 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 never. I sold my record collection because I could see at the time when vinyl was dying that a lot of people get stuck in the past and they refuse to move on. So I sold it just because I never want to be stuck in the past. And I don't regret it. But so that was pretty interesting. Largest collection of drum machines, analog drum machines in the world. Didn't actually see that many, but some of those older ones just looked fucking interesting. The font they used those fonts in a lot of 80s movies and stuff. You know, the futuristic sci-fi movies where they're trying to imagine what the future's going to be like. They use the same font. So back when they made those drum machines in the 70s or 80s, they obviously thought that looked futuristic, but now it looks kind of dated, which is also pretty interesting. That was quite exciting for me. How's that for you? If you're not a music producer, could you get anything out of that? I think that was rather interesting. So now we're going to get onto some even more esoteric music news. So these names will mean nothing to you if you're not a music producer, but I think you should look at this stuff because this technology can bleed over into other fields. If you're a creative person, you might get something out of this. I fucking hope, but I will. So the first is the Beatmaker kit from Rolly. I think it's pronounced Rolly. Now what the fuck is Rolly? I don't know where this manufacturer comes from, but they seem to be leading the way in novelty music tech items. So I think they're most famous for this keyboard that is, it's like a piece of technology out of the Alien movies, the recent ones that weren't very good, by Ridley Scott, with the engineers. You know, the engineers have that weird technology that looks like putty, like a blob, and they touch it and it does things. That's kind of what this keyboard is. So it's a keyboard, but instead of having hard, solid keys, it has this plastic, soft, rubbery mold over where the keys would be, and the keys are kind of indented. So imagine you had a lot of Kit Kat blocks on a table separated, and you put pastry dough over it. It kind of looks and feels a little bit like that. So you press the keys on this rubbery, gooey things. And what makes that interesting, the reason why it's like that, is about dynamic performance. So with a keyboard, you just press the fucking keys. With a piano, you've got foot pedals to alter the sound a bit. But with this, if you slide your fingers down the keys, it will modulate the sound, and you can set the modulator. So you can change the pitch, you can change the wobble, or whatever you want. I think you can assign pretty much anything to it. And there's other things you can do. So you can slide your finger horizontally, and that will also change things. So it's a very original look at the traditional keyboard. I'm pretty sure they took a lot of drugs before they came up with this, because it's so outside of the box. I don't know how that could come from a regular human brain. I always thought it was quite a novelty. Do you know what? I'm actually going to get a picture of this up now, because you have to see it. I can't just talk about it. It's so bizarre looking. Anyways, going back to what I was saying, I thought this was always just some cheap novelty, but I found it in a shop recently and I nearly fucking bought it. But I put it on my serious list of things that I need to get after I get the critical parts from my studio, because it felt cool and it was inspirational. It made me want to make music, and that's a good thing. But I think if you learn how to play the piano on this, you're going to kind of fuck yourself. You should probably learn on a regular piano. Anyway, so yeah, the Raleigh Seaboard block. It's got a terrible, terrible name, Seaboard block. But have a look at this. So this is on YouTube. There's different types. There's a big one, which is like a grand piano, and then there's a smaller one. You can see at the top it connects to other pieces, and these things are modular. They connect to loads of different devices, which is amazing. I think we want to look at the grand Seaboard Rise 49. That's the one you see in most shops and stores and stuff like that. Here we go. Let's have a look. So that's what I was talking about. You can modulate the sound when you move between the keys horizontally. That is basically drift, and he's changing the filter as he moves it down. So the vertical axis is assigned to the filter modulator. So it looks the part. It looks very futuristic. So you can understand why anyone would want this in their studio for looks alone. Very future. I think my description was pretty good. Like, it's pastry dough over Kit Kat fingers, don't you think? Sounds like Justice. It just gives you that little bit extra, this keyboard. It's really tempting you to slide your fingers across it because none of the keys have any gaps. So yeah, that's the company in question. And I want to move on now to the product that I mentioned in the title of this video. And it's called the Beatmaker Kit. So have a look at this. I thought this was, I've seen this in the shop and it was awesome.
Beatmaker Kit from Raleigh, the portable music studio that will take your beatmaking to the next level. The Beatmaker Kit centers on the LightPad block with its uniquely touch-responsive and
LightPad block.
surface.
That's what I used.
Kit
Very
comes
fun.
with a range of software tools for building your skills and creating your tracks. Learn beatmaking essentials with a 6-month subscription to Melodics. Interactive lessons teach finger drumming to beatmakers of all backgrounds, whether you're making your first track or mastering your technique. Start playing with the expressive sound.
See, I never like seeing this when they have bite-sized versions on phones. It makes it look like it's for amateurs. They obviously want to sell it to amateurs because amateurs make up the largest portion of the market. Just the casual, right? It's the same with gaming. I don't like it when they do that. But I think obviously this has a lot of pro potential as well.
Control your favorite plugins. Customize the LightPad block surface for every project. You can reconfigure it for launching clips, mixing.
Like, no serious producer's gonna do anything on his fucking phone.
Illuminated surface also responds to touch.
You could, but they're probably not gonna.
Through intuitive gestures. Create your tracks faster with the Loop Block, which gives you easy shortcuts to production tools. The Beatmaker Kit from Rolly. Learn with hundreds of lessons, play with over 300 sounds, and produce tracks with popular DAWs. Take your beatmaking to the next level.
So this has got quite a lot of bells and whistles, but really any serious music producer is just going to use this as a controller for their own sounds on their laptop or whatever. And I like this product because of the way it feels. As soon as you touch it, you know it's not a gimmick. It's got an uneven surface, so each cell or each block has a lot of little individual dots inside it, and it feels like every individual dot is almost concave, so when you run your finger over it, you feel all these little dots nestled underneath the surface. And it felt really chunky and inviting to the touch, so you just wanted to play a drum loop as soon as you kind of set finger upon it. So that's kind of cool, and it's so future, isn't it? These multicolored block beat pad things have been around for about 3 or 4 years, but this one really does feel like an interesting evolution of the concept. The lights have never looked better on this kind of tech, and this technology is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Back in the day, this kind of tech, like Moby's drum machine museum, would take up a lot of space, but now things are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. There just isn't enough space for all of this shit. So I don't know if I'd actually buy it, but I wanted to show you that because I thought it was quite nice. And the other thing I wanted to show you was something called Riffer. Now this is quite a controversial thing. Music producers get really pissed off when they see software that automates things too much, because these companies who make such software are encouraging people not to learn how to play a musical instrument if it's just done automatically. And the best music will always come from the soul of a human that's created from within. So any tech that claims to do it for you is a little bit controversial, but that's kind of the way we're going. And if you can make something that sounds good on it, hey. So just have a look at this and let me know in the comments what you think. It is known as Riffer, and it's by a company called Audio Modern. Have a look at this, people.
Introducing Riffer, a creative MIDI sequencer that generates random patterns and melodies for you. Built for your sounds, synths, bass lines, beats, everything. Designed to feed anything that accepts MIDI signal, both software and hardware. You can predefine scales, choose complexity, steps, start and end points, set pitch, transpose, motion, measures, and more. Generate fresh ideas, sequences, riffs, and musical patterns. Turn them into something of your own, or let it run endlessly using the infinity mode. You can export the MIDI using drag and drop, or when using the app version, you can send MIDI over Wi-Fi or select Core MIDI for inter-app communication and to feed any compatible hardware.
So MIDI is just a communication protocol that allows your hardware to interface and talk to your computer and software.
Riffer is built both for studio and live performance. Discover a new musical performance plugin, endlessly variable and endlessly interesting.
I'll give it a thumbs up on YouTube. So I gotta say, that thing is pretty fucking interesting. Hey, if you don't know how to play music and you're stuck for ideas, this could be a very good option for you. Could be a good way to get the ball rolling when you're not that inspired, and it opens the door to people who can't make music. So I feel kind of positive about it. I don't think it's going to replace musicians quite yet, but I do think people, if they want to be a music producer, they should learn music theory, as the potential is so much more. What do you think about this kind of product? Finally, what's the difference between analog and digital? Actually, this is a very, very long debate indeed, but I saw something online and it gave one of the best descriptions of why analog is better than digital in terms of synthesizers. So I just want to talk about synthesizers. We'll talk about other technology another day, but synthesizers are machines that create sound with waves. And there's two types. There's digital and analog. And much like Moby, who you saw before, he had all analog equipment. What does that mean? It's a physical hardware box, and the sound is generated by blocks or tiers of analog circuitry. And as electric current voltage passes through each block, it takes on different characteristics and has a randomness to it that you don't get with digital. Digital kind of does the same thing. It uses a computer to create an approximation of sound, which is then pushed out of the speaker in the form of pressure waves. And analog does the same thing. It's making an approximation of sound, but whereas the digital comes from ones and zeros and binary that's eventually converted into sound waves, the analog equipment uses electricity and voltage, and there is a lot of room for error there, but the computer will be the same every single time. And so people say analog is special because it sounds different every time, and as the units age, the circuitry will start to interact in slightly different ways, so the pitch will kind of change a little bit and the filters will change a little bit. So that seems to be the difference between analog and digital synthesis. And one of the best descriptions I've seen of this is by a music producer who goes by the name of Ricci Sakamoto, who's Japan's most famous music producer, I think. He's made a lot of great songs. Make sure you check out Ricci Sakamoto if you haven't. He's a legend. Just keep digging if it doesn't hit you straight away, because he's got some classic shit. And he compares the analog sound to lightning. So I'm just going to play this to you. He's talking about a new product by Moog, which is the legendary analog synthesizer. And Moog produced this video for this new synthesizer, and quite a lot of work went into it to make it look vintage and old. So here is Ricci Sakamoto talking about this new Moog analog keyboard, and then he explains why voltage and electricity-based analog synthesizers are special to him as opposed to digital. There he is. Ryuichi-san. I'll read this to you for all the podcasters. Urban people like you and I, says Ryuichi, live in an environment surrounded by electronic, or rather digital sounds. But as humans, our bodies are natural, they're not man-made. Unless you're Kanye West. Our ears and brains yearn to hear more natural sounds. It must be some kind of reaction. Yep, I agree with everything he's saying. I really, really do. So next he's going to give his lightning analogy, which inspired me to make this part of the show. This is the new synthesizer. This costs $8,000, by the way. Just come out. It has a digital interface, but sounds transmitted by analog synths feel more natural than those of digital synths. The late Isao Tomita, a leading figure of synths who I was also acquainted with, said, and this is just great, this is the line, "Electronic sounds, like thunder, are also natural sounds, and I agree." And that is just genius. So electricity is real. It actually exists. It's a physical thing that exists within the confines of that hardware box, that drum machine or that synthesizer. That is analog. But by contrast, before the sound before the instruction from the machine, whether the instruction is from voltage or whether it's from digital, before the sound goes out of the machine, It's either real in the form of electricity and analog, or it doesn't exist in the form of digital. Because digital, at that exact same stage, before the sound comes out of the speaker, doesn't exist. Physically, it's not there. It's inside the computer as a 1 or a 0. And I think that's an amazing analogy, that analog synths are like lightning. It's a real physical thing. And maybe that's a little bit of an explanation as to why analog can be better than digital, because it actually exists. And as humans, our very discerning ears can pick out something that is cold and unnatural and born from 1s and 0s. So that was a little bit of a different Johnny Massacre show today. I really want to hear, especially from the people watching who don't know anything about making music. How was this for you? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. I really, really want to know. And that's enough talking about music tech. Now, you know the drill. It's time to talk about my life. So what's going on in my life? I just want to share with you, I ate an entire jar of peanut butter today. This is the 3rd or 4th time I'm recording the Johnny Massacre show. The news was so shit and so political, I just thought, fuck it. I'm going to talk about something I love. Why the hell not? But while I was making one Johnny Massacre show, my peanut butter from Amazon, just a solitary jar of peanut butter, that's all I ordered, arrived. And some cunt rang my doorbell. So I put the intro music on and left you hanging, or would have left you hanging. And then I went to get the peanut butter, but the motherfucker actually wasn't at the door, and he was still in the entrance, and he rang the doorbell again. The motherfucker came back. By that time, the Johnny Massacre show had been destroyed, but I got my peanut butter, and this is my guilty habit that I'm going to share with you. Sometimes I eat an entire jar of peanut butter on its own, and I fucking love it. It's intense. And I get this peanut butter with no sugar in. Hard to get in Japan, but you can get it from Amazon. When you get it, all the water has separated from the peanuts. And so you put a spoon in and you try the best you can to mix the two together. But there's always a few isolated vacuums where it's just pure peanut butter with no moisture at all. And when you eat that shit, it clogs up your throat on the way down. You start choking to death. It is a very fun experience. And so I ate that. Am I the only person who does that, eats a whole jar of peanut butter? Please, can you share with me if you do stuff like that? Because I want to know. I'm not the only one in the world. Other people must be doing that. It must be. And if it's not peanut butter, do you have any guilty pleasures food-wise where you just eat the whole fucking thing? And I'm not talking ice cream or the obvious thing. I'm talking weird shit like peanut butter. Or maybe it's not weird. Maybe I'm going to find out everyone has a secret stash of peanut butter that they love to chow down on from time to time. So that's going on. Also, I've been spending a lot of time just organizing samples, drum samples specifically, and processing them on the hardware that I have. And I've got some stuff that's, I mean, it's sounding ridiculously high grade. I love analog equipment. I love that thunder, that real electricity that this equipment can generate. Digital is pale by comparison. So I'm really looking forward to you hearing my new music, which is going to be very heavy, very drum and bass with very beefy drums. So that's what's going on in my life. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up for today. Am I going to join the light side or the dark side? At the end of each episode, we have to decide whether to finish on a positive or a negative note. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm sitting on a fence. My girlfriend's in hospital. She's having some, I don't know what's exactly wrong with her, but she sent me a picture of a medical table with some medical instruments and devices with blood splatters everywhere. So she's really having fun in hospital right now. So that's a little bit negative, but it's also positive because she's trying to fix herself and wants to get better. So I really hope she's all right. And I'm looking forward to seeing her. So more will be revealed on the show tomorrow about my bird's health condition. But yeah, she should be fine. Right, so that's a little bit solemn, but that's real life. Order and chaos, you know. And I hope all of you watching out there are happy and healthy and will be in fine spirits for tomorrow's Johnny Massacre show. I went by that name of Johnny Massacre, and you've been witnessing the Johnny Massacre show. Goodbye.